Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to another edition of the Outdoor Magazine radio show right here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan. I am so glad to have you along with us. How was your week? What have you done since we last talked? Anything fun? Anything outdoors? Did you take advantage of that warm weather we had? Man, Mother Nature is absolutely bonkers lately, isn't she? I mean, last week it was like 85 degrees at my house, and 36 hours later it was 35 degrees. She just doesn't seem to know what she wants to do. But as I always say, I take some solace in that fact. I love the fact that when Mother Nature does that, it reminds us that she is ultimately in control, that we as weak little men and women are just some small, minute, minor part of this cog. And it doesn't matter what we think. It doesn't matter what's convenient to us. It doesn't matter what matches our plans. We have to make our plans in sync with Mother Nature. And I think that's cool. And literally, it's been very cool. I have had some reports of some smelt runs across the state. You remember smelt, right? Those little critters that used to swim the shoreline in the springtime. It was a springtime tradition across much of Michigan. People would wade out in droves in their waders, and they'd dip smelt. And they would dip smelt, and they would dip smelt, and they would dip smelt. And they would fill up 55-gallon drums full of smelt. They'd fill up the back of their pickups full of smelt. There is no way you're going to clean and eat more than, 5 gallons of smelt? So I think over the years, an awful lot of those fish went to waste. These days, of course, you can't, what is it, a 2-gallon limit these days? Don't quote me on that. I think it's a 2-gallon limit per angler. And I say angler because you do have to have a fishing license to dip smelt. And if you are in one of those areas in the state that still gets a smelt run, you're keeping it quiet and you're enjoying it. Have fun. Smelt are one of those fish that Great Lakes game fish, trout, salmon, walleye, love to eat. Just happens that people love to eat them too. This weekend, Saturday, in fact, and if you're listening to us on Sunday, this was yesterday, but I think the topic still holds validity. Saturday, this weekend, Earth Day. The Earth Day celebration here. This year's motto, this year's slogan, invest in our planet. I find Earth Day to be interesting. I find Earth Day in a lot of ways to be a farce. I think Earth Day is the one day a year when people who otherwise would not invest in our planet get a chance to go out and plant a few trees or whatever and make themselves feel good, to somehow make up for all the harm they've done to our planet the other 364 days a year. I would just say that I think we as hunters and anglers and shooters and trappers celebrate Earth Day every day of the year. We celebrate Earth Day 365 days a year. We don't wait for one special day in the springtime to go out and gather together with all of our like-minded people and dig a few holes and plant a few trees and say, there, we're good. We celebrated Earth Day. We invested in our planet. No. We as hunters and anglers and shooters and trappers invest in our planet every time we buy a new piece of hunting or fishing gear, every time we buy a new hunting or fishing license. We, hunters and anglers and shooters and trappers, are the ultimate conservationists. We don't need Earth Day to remind us to celebrate or invest in our planet. So keep that in mind as you see the news reports this weekend of people out planting trees to celebrate Earth Day. We do it every day. One of the ways I'm going to celebrate Earth Day this weekend is I'm going to be at a turkey blind. And I would say that I and all the other hunters or anglers out there this weekend have done more to invest in our planet in the one day of sitting in a turkey blind by the gear we bought and the licenses we bought than planting a few trees. Anyway, I'm very excited about this year's turkey season. On the way into the studio this morning, and we record midweek, that's no surprise. It was a very cold morning, but there wasn't much wind, and it was going to be a sunny day. So I snuck into my number one turkey hunting property just to see what I could hear. And lo and behold, they were gobbling on the roost a few yards into the woodlot on the other property, the adjacent property. That's an excellent, excellent sign. So I will indeed be sitting out there with my Wraith 270 see-through ground blind and my crossbow Saturday morning, and probably some of Sunday as well. I'm looking forward to it. Speaking of Primal, that Primal Wraith 270 see-through blind is my favorite blind. It's my go-to hunting blind. Why do I like it? I like it because it's lightweight. I like it because there's a lot of visibility. I like it because I can see out, but the critters can't see in for the most part. You know, there are situations where if the sun hits you just right, it'll shine through that mesh. But I have a solution for that. So the folks at Primal Outdoors, I've been working with them for a few years now. They asked me, and I consider this to be quite an honor, they asked me to be part of a team to help design a new lineup of hunting blinds, portable pop-up hunting blinds. Now, I'm not the only person they asked. They asked several people, I'm sure. But the fact that they asked me to give my input, I can think is pretty cool. And I do have some experience hunting out of ground blinds, 90% of it bow hunting out of ground blinds. So here are some of the suggestions I made. Number one, you've got to fix that little window clip, that clip that attaches to the red elastic that slides up and down. That always comes off. You got to fix that. That's a minor thing. Number two, you need to lower the windows. I have this problem routinely that when I get settled back into my chair, I can't get up high enough to shoot over the windows. Or if a bird or something walks in close, or if I'm on a hill or something, leaning slightly backwards, they need to lower the windows. So if they can't lower the windows, maybe put some panels in the bottom so you can shoot a little bit lower. Number two, I talked about the sun coming through the side of the blind. I routinely, in my backpack, carry either a big black T-shirt or a big black sweatshirt. And what I do with that is if I'm in a situation where the sun is coming through the blind and it's lighting me up, and this is something I've done for years now, I'll take that T-shirt or sweatshirt and I'll put it up on the side of the blind and block the sunlight coming through. So I said, Primal, what I would suggest is you offer a lightweight nylon removable black sun shield, sun shade that we can put up in those blinds. I also suggested 180 degrees of visibility as opposed to 270 because I think 180 is enough. In a 270, sometimes I feel like when I'm hunkered in the back of the blind that I'm still exposed. If I had the half of the blind in the back blacked out, I would have more room to hide. Regarding shoot-through mesh, I had several people say, well, I don't want it to be a see-through mesh. I want it to be a shoot-through mesh. I don't want it to be a shoot-through mesh. I don't. I want it to be a see-through mesh, and it's one or the other. It can't be both. I suggested some kind of a shelf, maybe a mesh shelf that you can attach to the side of the blind. You could put your calls there, your turkey calls there. You could put your binos. You could put your phone. If you're turkey hunting like me, you could put your cigar there. And the final thing I recommended is you got to get rid of zippers. There is no more obnoxious sound in the springtime turkey woods or the summertime bear woods or the fall deer woods than the sound of a zipper going up and down on the blind to get in or out. I said, why not replace it with magnets? Magnets would be pretty quiet. So the folks at Primal were very appreciative of that. And they said, we will seriously take a look at that. So we'll see. We'll see if some of those actually make it into the models for next year. But again, I appreciate the opportunity to be involved. I love working with companies that want to know what people think. And that's usually the smaller companies. You know, you get into these big corporate conglomerates that have been sold and sold and sold. And they, in some ways, I think, lose their soul. And they morph into something other than what they started out at. And that's the American dream, right? You come up with an idea of a product or a company, and you build it, and you build it, and you work hard, and you make it into something so successful that somebody wants to buy it. They give you a bunch of money for it. You go into semi-retirement, and it's the American dream. But I hate it when companies I work with do that because they change completely. Coming up on this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show after the break, Jason Carstens of True North Guide Service joins me. I want to talk with him about early season fishing in the eastern UP. I've spent a lot of time the last few weeks talking about fishing in the southern part of the state. Well, let's move our way north and see what Jason has to say. He fishes the St. Mary's River a lot and others as well. Then Brian Anderson, the tick Terminator, reminds us that this is the time of year when ticks are starting to come out. I've never had a tick. I'm jinxing myself by saying that, but I've never had a tick. In our second hour, the longest-running charter captain on the Great Lakes, Ed Retherford of Trout Scout Charters, joins me. Then Nick Green of MUCC. Our Ask Avery segment this week talks about, well, among other things, leaving dead deer along the side of the road. And in hour number 3, we're talking turkey tactics with the guy who was involved in the very first Michigan turkey hunting season. His name is Tom Lounsbury. And we'll wrap it up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. That's all coming up and much more this week right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Alpena on WZTK. That's 105.7 FM. You can hear us in Port Huron on WPHM, 1380 AM. And north of the bridge in Iron Mountain on WMIQ, 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Boning Archery. Michigan-based Boning has been a leader in the archery industry since 1946. They continue to come up with new products, new designs. As I am in the Turkey Woods this weekend, I'll have a Boning quiver on my crossbow. Now think about this. A company that was involved in archery back when Fred Bear was around, and they still come up with products to be relevant in archery today. Check them out online at boning.com. That's BOHNING, boning.com. While you are online, I would encourage you to head over to my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com, and then swing over to this one, True North Guide Service. Well, this is on Facebook, True North Guide Service. That's the Facebook home of Jason Carstens. Jason is a fishing guide in the eastern UP. He just happens to run an Angler Quest, my favorite fishing boat, by the way. And we've spent a lot of time lately talking about fishing in the southern part of the state. I've been waiting for it to kind of break up and get nice enough where we could talk about fishing in the North Country, and also waiting for Jason to have an opening in his schedule. And this week he does, and he joins us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Jason, welcome back. How are you?
Good morning, Mike. How are you? I'm doing well.
I'm glad to hear that. Tell me about your operation, Jason.
Well, I primarily fish for Atlantic salmon. I've been branching out a little bit more, fishing for lake trout and some other species as well, like whitefish. We kind of have a full myriad of fish up here to go for and to play after. It just kind of depends on how the weather's going to treat us that day.
Well, and how has the weather been treating you lately?
Well, teasing us not as severely as you guys, but we've had a few nice warm days. We finally just got rid of our snow. There's still some snow piles around, but there's still some ice flowing out there in the water, so you got to watch where you're going. But so, we're out on the water.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Can you get out, though?
Yep. Not all of the docks are in yet, but we're slowly getting there, and everyone's been very eager to get out in their boats.
Oh, I bet. People are chomping at the bit by the time this time of year, aren't they?
Yes. It's been a long winter, a lot of snow up here, and we are very much looking forward to some sunshine.
So, Jason, are you strictly on the St. Mary's, or do you venture into other waters as well?
No, I fish Lake Superior and Northern Lake Huron as well. The St. Mary's River is my primary body of water. But I know I like kind of traveling all over for whatever's going to get the most fish.
I see some posts from you about the smaller stream fishing as well. Is that part of the charter service, or is that just something you do for fun?
That's more just what I do for fun. The small streams in the eastern UP are pretty delicate streams, and I don't think that they would handle well to some heavy fishing pressure. We don't have very many inland streams up here. Some of those pictures that you may see of me fishing small streams is actually me traveling downstate, like to the Asabo and Upper Manistee.
Gotcha. Just as an aside, any smelt runs you've heard of this spring yet?
Well, we're having smelt for dinner tonight.
Well, that answers that question. I won't ask you for a honey hole, but have you had smelt runs up there consistently, or have they been spotty year to year?
Smelt runs we're still blessed, and they are consistent up here. They have been running for a couple of weeks. It's actually starting to wind down here in the eastern UP right now. But I believe the Lake Superior streams are still producing smelt right now, but I think it's all kind of moving westward as these water temperatures start rising. But it's been a very good year this year, and been very busy on those streams, smelt dipping, as always.
I bet you had the girls out there too, haven't you?
You know what? They're old enough now where they are dipping more than me, and I'm more just kind of supervising and making sure everyone stays dry and warm.
Well, you talk about a springtime Michigan tradition, smelt dipping. That's the epitome.
It really is. We keep the tradition alive, and it's just a lot of fun. And one nice thing that I've really been seeing has been the trend lately has definitely been more of a family-based tradition as opposed to, shall we say, a party scene.
No, let's say it. Let's say it. A truckload of drunks pulling up and disrupting the evening. Yeah. That used to be, unfortunately, a big part of smelt dipping.
Well, there's smelt dippers and there's smelt drinkers.
Yep.
But I have noticed this year for sure, which was nice having my girls out, that it was much more family-based. I saw a lot of parents and kids out there, and that was always refreshing to see when you're out there with your kids as well.
And that, getting your kids involved, I know, Jason, from talking with you over the last couple of years, that is a big part of what, well, in some ways your business, but your family dynamics. You're an outdoor family.
Well, thank you. We enjoy it. We just try to teach them as much as we can and give them options so that they can make their own choices as they grow up, but have the education of what it truly is about. And these girls are going to give some boys a run for their money later on.
They're pretty impressive with a fly rod right now.
Yeah, I love it. They actually put on a show last year down in the Lachino Islands in Hessel. There is they call it Frog Fest, and it's an environmental awareness show and showing how different things that we can do to protect the environment. And I was actually contacted to ask if the girls could show how kids could fly fish. So we went down there, and I just stood in the background and let them. They were on a baseball field teaching other kids how to cast.
Ah, that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
So we have a lot of fun.
Your business of fishing for Atlantics in the St. Mary's, you don't have to be an expert fly angler to take advantage of that, do you?
Not at all. You can be as technical as you want. You can definitely spay fish for these Atlantics. You can cast spoons and crankbaits for these if you have no interest in fly fishing. You can go trolling for them. But when it comes to the Atlantic salmon and fly fishing, it's very easy as a novice. It's not technical at all. What it comes down to is having the right presentation as far as the food source that they're looking for at that time. And with a little bit of help with that and the willingness of these fish, we'll get you hooked up.
Your presentation, I mean, I know it's going to vary from time to time, but are you throwing streamers or what is it?
So I throw streamers a lot, and then we also throw little nymph patterns. These fish are very much trout-like, and they will eat lots of bugs along with minnows. They're not on a strict diet by any means. They're very much opportunistic feeders, and so it just depends on the water temp and the season as to what's going on. They eat everything from caddis flies to the big hex mayflies to they gorge themselves on our smelt that are up there. Speaking of smelt, we don't have the other forage fish such as the alewives up here. We all depend on the smelt up here, which are still plentiful. So that's the main fish forage up here.
Well, what you describe reminds me a lot of steelhead, the way they feed.
It is. So early season, like starting right about now, I'm trolling for these Atlantic salmon out into Lake Huron in, upwards of 150 foot of water, but I'm maybe fishing 5 feet down. And they're up where the water temperature is warm because that's where the bait fish are at. And so, yeah, it's very much like steelhead fishing right now, early on in the season. It's a lot of fun.
Can you get out on Lake Superior now, or is it still ice?
So there's still some ice flowing out there, but right now we are able to get out. And actually what we're doing right now is we're chasing after some spring perch. They're starting to come in, getting ready to spawn. But there is some ice flows out there, so you definitely need to watch that wind and the conditions. But knock on wood, our ice is melting.
So your perch technique, do you anchor up over areas that have been traditionally good? Do you follow them with your bow mount on that angler quest? What's your tactic?
So you definitely have to follow them. So on the Lake Superior side, technically we're still in the St. Mary's River, and so there's still a lot of current, and these fish are constantly moving in the current. You still see some people that will anchor and wait for the fish to come for them. I prefer using my electronics and the bow mount on that angler quest and chasing after them. So I do a lot of searching, and then I can hold on top of that school as it moves, and we have a lot of fun. So. That
angler quest is something else, isn't it? I mean, you're fishing big water with it, you're fishing the rivers with it, you're taking your kids out, you're taking your clients out. What more could you ask for?
I'll never look back at going to a different boat. It is the best fishing platform I've ever been on. It's hard to describe, and I always offer people, even if they just want to go for a ride, let me know, and we'll go give it a spin.
And you're trailering that boat down to Saginaw Bay this summer for the Walleye for Warriors event. Thank you for that.
Oh, I wouldn't miss that. Last year was my first year, and I'll be back every year. What a wonderful event. But, yes, I trailer that boat everywhere. It pulls just as nice as any other boat. And it launches just as easy, too. You just have to have a little bit of a system down, and I can launch that boat anywhere I could launch any other boat.
And by the way, that Walleye for Warriors event this summer is June 10th and 11th on Saginaw Bay. They're looking for 10 more boat captains. Go to walleyesforwarriors.org, walleyesforwarriors.org to sign up. If you want to go find Jason online, look for him on Facebook as True North Guide Service on Facebook. That's True North Guide Service. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, we will continue our conversation with Captain Jason Carstens. And then after that, we'll wrap up the hour with the Tick Terminator, Brian Anderson. His website, limetickbughub.com. I have to say that slow because I can't say it fast. Lots more coming up in hour number 1 right here on Outdoor Magazine. Outdoor Magazine show in Battle Creek on WBCK 95.3 FM. You can hear us in St. Joe on WSJM. It's 94.9 FM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Marquette on WDMJ. That's 1320 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Michigan-based Whack-'em and Plack-'em, a very cool and unique way to show off your trophies. Use them with shoulder mounts, European mounts, even fish. For details, I wonder if you could use them for turkeys. Yeah, you could. Absolutely. For details, check out the website nontypicalinnovations.com. That's nontypicalinnovations.com. We're talking now with Jason Carstens of True North Guide Service. Out of the Sioux, you can find him on Facebook as True North Guide Service. Jason, before the break, you mentioned Atlantic salmon. I am fascinated by this fish. I've never caught one, never seen one that I know of, but I find them very interesting. It seems like they're, in some ways, the perfect fish to fill a void maybe in that northern Lake Huron and other parts of the state.
They absolutely have filled that void, and we're very thankful for Lake Superior State University and the DNR planting them as aggressively as they have. We really don't have a Pacific salmon run except for the pink salmon that are still here to any extent anymore. They don't stock any of the kings or cohos anymore up here. So these Atlantics have really taken over as our salmon, and now they're starting to broaden their stocking, and for a couple of years they've been stocking them even down as far as, I believe, Port Huron on the Thumb and the Ossawa River out into Lake Huron.
Hard-fighting fish, good-tasting fish?
Yep. Their Latin name is salmon salar, which means leaping fish, and they will put on a show for you. We've had them jump, double-digit times as you're fighting them. And wonderful table fare, but truly beautiful fish and aggressive and just like to put on a show.
And you catch those in the big lake and the river?
Yes. We get them early on, starting right about now in Lake Huron. And then they tend, not all of them, but a lot of them tend to migrate up the St. Mary's River for the summer. And they are feeding on the smelt and the rest of the bug hatches as our water temperature is warm. And they don't actually spawn until late October, November, depending on the water temperature that year. But they spawn late, and then they'll return out into Lake Huron for the winter.
And the way you catch them in the river to me is fascinating because you are allowed to actually tie off to the dam, which to me these days, I can't imagine doing that anywhere but in the Sioux, but it gives you a very interesting and pretty cool fishery.
It does. There are some rumors that type of fishing may be changing, unfortunately. But so we've got a little bit of unknown going in. But as of right now, we're very fortunate and hopefully all respectful so that we can keep this fishing technique alive. But there's a whole mess of ways that you can fish for them up here in town. Whether you're trolling or even putting the bow mount trolling motor down and kind of hovering and casting around as well. But yes, we're very unique in our one powerhouse that we are allowed to hook up to that these fish like to hold at. And you're sight fishing most of these fish. You can see them 3 to 10 feet down in the water, and you can sometimes even watch them take your fly.
So how deep is it right there below the dam? You say 3 to 10. Is that the depth?
We're in about 14 to 20 feet of water.
See,
so these fish are kind of hovering, and they're swimming all around in the water column, eating whatever they can.
See, I'm used to Inner Saginaw Bay, and we can't routinely see down 14 feet of water. So, but I get it. Where you are, that would be very cool.
It's fun, and yet it can be tormenting at times too. When these fish decide that they're done eating for a little bit, and they're sitting there in front of you, and you're presenting your fly or your lure to them over and over again, it can be a little disheartening and or question your decisions on what fly to use. So you find yourself being very proficient at tying knots and retying your gear, changing out.
So when does your guiding season kick off?
My guiding season really kicks off kind of the second half of May. And most of that in May and early June is usually trolling for these out in big water for the Atlantics. And then the second half of June all the way into October is mainly fly fishing for the Atlantics. It makes for a heck of a fishing season.
Well, listen, I've seen the pictures, I've seen the videos. I know it's a lot of fun. I would encourage people to go to your Facebook page, True North Guide Service on Facebook. That's True North Guide Service. Book a trip with you. And Jason, I will look forward to seeing you this summer, if not before, at Linwood Beach Marina for the Walleye for Warriors event.
Absolutely. I'm excited to be there. I'm hoping to come down a week beforehand to fish so I can make sure I got those fish dialed in for the veterans that we take out.
Well, you'll be heading south just at this time. I'm headed north through the Sioux to go to Ontario, but I'll see you down here. Jason Carstens of True North Guide Service on Facebook. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll wrap up this first hour of the show with the tick Terminator, Brian Anderson. He says, hey, this is the time to be looking for those little critters. Details after the break here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Carroll on WKYO 1360 AM and WIDL 92.1 FM. You can hear us in Lansing on WILS 1320 AM and north of the bridge in Newberry on WNBY 1450 AM. Speaking of the U, let's talk about Rapid River knives. You know I have a Rapid River knife in my pocket right now, as I always do. I think they are beautiful pieces of handmade gear designed to be used. Check out their showroom just east of Rapid River on US 2 if you get a chance. If not, go to the website rapidriverknifeworks.us, rapidriverknifeworks.us, and you will see what I mean. I want to turn our attention now to the tick Terminator. His name is Brian Anderson. His website is limetickbughub.com. And we'd like to check in with Brian this time of year to remind us about those pesky critters. Brian, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Hey, good. Thanks for having me again. Always a joy to talk to you.
The pleasure is mine. So in the limited time we have here, bring us up to speed on what we have to keep in mind, Brian.
Hey, it's springtime. I mean, the snow is finally gone here in the UP, even for the most part. But, I mean, hey, think about springtime. People are getting out. They want to go out in the woods for the first time in a long time. But they're looking at hunting. But remember, they are the hunted also, because the springtime is the worst time of year for ticks. Terrible. You know, whether it's somebody fishing along streams or walking through grass and vegetation, you know, spring cleaning at the camp, mushroom hunting, looking for the deer sheds, you know, cleaning up around their deer stands and food plots here shortly. You got to keep in mind the ticks, man. They're out.
So why are the ticks even a concern? Now, you know, you get a bite from a mosquito, it itches, you get a welt, and you move on. But how is that different from a tick?
Well, ticks can carry numerous different diseases. I mean, their most famous disease is Lyme disease, which is just horrible. But they can carry other diseases, too. Not every tick does. But, you know, you never know which ones are going to, you know, have the diseases. So you want to prepare yourself. You want to protect yourself so they don't get you and don't bite you. So you want to prepare your clothes and stuff like that, too. That's for sure.
So what is the best way to protect ourselves from ticks?
Well, do exactly what I do. I treat all my clothes and gear from my shoes to the top of my head with permethrin. You spray permethrin on, and the cool thing about that, you want to do it, you know, outdoors, like on a clothesline or laying them flat on the ground, so that the clothes are very flat, so there's no wrinkles in them. And spray permethrin on them and let it dry for at least 4 hours. Best overnight. and then you're good for weeks and months at a time. That's the cool thing about permethrin, is that it's not a daily application, because when you spray it on, it binds to the fabric. It'll bind to the boots if they have some cloth on them, or like a hat. But it goes through the wash also and still sticks. It still stays there, so that when ticks crawl up, it drives them nuts. After a few seconds, a lot of times 40, maybe 60 seconds or less, they're going to fall off and die. So by the time you get home, you hardly have any ticks on you, which is the whole point, and it works incredible. It doesn't bother us at all, but drives little bugs nuts.
Well, that was my next question. Is this permethrin? Is this something we're going to find out years down the road causes cancer, and we're going to say, oh man, we never should have used this stuff?
No, I mean, it's been used for decades and decades already. So, I mean, there's no problems at all. You never spray it on your skin. I mean, it's not going to kill you, but it's only for clothes and gear. So once it's dry, I mean, it's invisible. It's odorless for hunters. That's why I put it on my hunting clothes too. And you can't even see it. You can't smell it. Nothing. So it's the best thing that you can do out there. And also, even if mosquitoes land on permethrin treated, clothes and pants and shirts, they're not going to stay on very long either, because they're going to sense that as they walk around on your clothes, and they fly off. I had black flies do that before. I watched them dance around on my thigh, on my permethrin treated jeans, and they call it the hot feet syndrome, because they could sense it. I mean, for me, it was entertainment. I was watching them jump around, and it flew off. I said, cha-ching, baby, I won, because they didn't bite me. It was great.
So permethrin is the best preventative. What if we do get a tick? I have people ask me this all the time. I don't know why they ask me. I've never had a tick. If you do get a tick and it burrows in, what's the best way to get that thing off, Brian?
I'm glad you asked, because the best way to get it off is probably with a fine-tip tweezers. You want to try to avoid pinching, grabbing them with your fingers, because when you do that, you're going to kind of squeeze their body, and when you squeeze their body, they're more apt to puke the bad stuff into you when you're trying to get them out, so you don't get it. So you want to use a fine-tip tweezers, get at the very base of the skin there. Try to get as little body as possible and pull them out. All right? I tell people, be very gentle with the tick, because you don't want to make a tick. You don't want to tick off a tick, when you're taking it off. Be gentle with it. You may want to save it after you take it off. I don't care if you shoot it with a 30-06, but be gentle when you take it off. You may want to save it, could possibly, send it in for testing. But then the next thing is you really want, you may want to wash off, soap and water or rubbing alcohol or something like that, the bite. And if a little bit of the head is stuck in there, it's no big deal. It'll come out in a couple days.
Brian, always a pleasure. I got to let you go. Brian Anderson, the Tick Terminator, the website, LimeTickBugHub.com, LimeTickBugHub.com. We got to take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back, the longest working charter captain that we can find on the Great Lakes. His name is Ed Retherford of Trout Scout Charters out of Alpena. Then Nick Green of MUCC checks in, and this week's Ask Avery segment. That's all coming up in hour number 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to hour number 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan. I make that distinction maybe for me, if nothing more, but I like to remind you that this is not just a podcast. Now, there are a lot of great outdoor podcasts across Michigan and that originate from Michigan, with many fine outdoor podcast hosts. But this show starts out and is designed and is recorded and is distributed and is produced as an outdoor radio show, a 3-hour weekly outdoor radio show heard across the great state of Michigan. And I would encourage you, if you can, to listen to the show on your local AM or FM station. There, you get your local news and content. Plus, the radio stations, the broadcast affiliates, get the content of the show before the podcast version of the show is uploaded. But if you can't listen to the broadcast show, isn't it nice to know that there is a podcast available? Where do you hear it? Well, I'm glad you asked. You can hear it on my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. I put it up on my Mike Avery Outdoors Facebook page. Oh, it's on Amazon Music, Audible, Twitter, LinkedIn, Apple Music, Google Play, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Spotify, TuneIn, Stitcher, Player FM, Deezer, Odyssey, and I even put it on YouTube. Yes, there's an audio version of the radio show on YouTube, and I would encourage you to check it out there if you are interested. I do love podcasting, though. In fact, I do podcasts for 4 of my advertising partners every month, including Offshore Tackle, Angler Quest Boats, Primal Outdoors, and Polar Craft Boats. And when we're done here in the studio recording this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show, we will record this month's Polar Craft podcast. So I would encourage you to keep an eye and an ear out for that as well. Regardless of when you are listening to my voice, how you are listening to my voice, I do appreciate you being along with me. You know, I wouldn't be able to do this for as long as I have without your support, and it does mean a lot to me. Yeah, I'm an old timer. I've been around for a while, but I haven't been around for as long as Captain Ed Retherford of Trout Scout Charters out of Alpena. He is, as far as we can figure out, and nobody's disputed this, he is the longest running working charter captain on the Great Lakes. And he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Cap, welcome back. How are you?
Great, Mike. How have you been?
I've been doing great. Listen, I hope you don't take offense at me saying that I haven't been around as long as you. I think it's a badge of honor, my friend.
Well, thank you. My wife says I'm not supposed to tell everybody that when they call me on the phone. So,
but
anyways, yeah, it's been a great run.
Well, and it's not over yet, Ed. You're going to be out there this summer, right?
Oh yeah, but I'm just talking about all the years and what's happened and everything.
Well, you are in an interesting place because you have had the chance to see this northern Lake Huron fishery ebb and flow and develop and crash and rebound firsthand. What's it going to be like out there this summer, Ed, in your experience?
Well, everybody talks about the environment and the temperatures, and that plays with us it plays a great deal. If last year we had high hopes, and then we got real warm water at the end of the summer, and it was hard to, stay within normal distances. We had to run for the fish, and of course the winds blew. So, but if the temperatures are there and we can get to them, the things that have changed over the years, consistently is that we have a great variety of fish out there. Everything's, we've had the crash at 2004 and everything else, and we've talked about that forever, but things are slowly coming back, and actually the last few years things really, really developed. So,
are they coming back as a trout fishery or as an Atlantic fishery? I was talking with Jason Carstens out of the Sioux in hour number 1, and he loves those Atlantics. So what role do they play in your opinion?
Well, we have a short window on them, okay? I mean, a lot of people, because that's what they advertise, a lot of people advertise that, but we have a spring fishery, partially spring fishery, and then, I've been documenting it ever since they started, and basically about June 15th, about June 30th in our area is pretty consistent, and then after that, it's like, oh my gosh, I caught an Atlantic salmon, because you don't know what's going to hit, and that's where it abounds here. And then, of course, then they enter the streams and the stream guides see them, but it's not as good as it is up in Northern Lake.
If we were talking in the old days, Ed, this time of year, we'd be talking about this near-shore, fantastic brown trout fishery. Is that still there? Well,
the DNR, we've gone over and over with this, but the DNR is not planting them here. But we have a local agreement. One of the, I want to call him kids. He's probably almost 50 now, but he's got a permit to release. He releases 800 to 1,500, which is very minor, but they are private hatchery fish, that have been okayed by the DNR, and a lot of people are going to argue with me, but they've actually showed up again. There's been some people that we could still target them. It's just that you can't say, it's got to be one or two individuals that know that they're going to have to fish 5 or 6 hours, and they might get one or two on. Kind of deal.
I would think that most charter clients are not willing to do that.
That's correct. But, I do have customers that I've had for, we've talked about, but I've got some customers that I've had one for 39 years, and maybe even pushing 40 some now. And, he could sit there all day with me and fish for him, but, you're correct. That we can't look at. So our stable is that, if we fish in the morning for the salmonoids for maybe an hour or two, and then we target lake trout. But, the spread that we put out, we catch anything from, the wall, your walleyes, I'm going to say your walleyes, but everybody's walleyes from Saginaw Bay, and, they're up here too. And as many as 6 or 7 different fish. Now, in the last few years, we've had coho planted, and that's really developed off the thumb area this time of the year. We don't see them till later, but they are showing up, and that's a very good positive now, because it looks like there's more available from the DNR, and it looks like they're going to start, the test has been over, and it looks like they're going to start putting more and more in at certain hot spots every year.
You've got a guy who's been fishing with you for 40 years. That is pretty cool.
It is, and he's actually... people look at me like I'm crazy when I talk about it. He's a doctor. I'm not going to give his name right now, but we laugh. And I think, being that way, he's kept a log. But I think we've caught 26 different species of fish over the years. And I mean, I'm talking, white suckers, rock bass, and we've caught these trolling, downrigger trolling, not actually fishing worms and fishing for them. So it's sort of funny, but you can name it, and we probably have caught it, kind of thing.
So you were talking about going out and fishing for silverfish in the morning, and then going over to lake trout. Listen, you know this better than anybody, but it used to bother me when the Kings first crashed, and the good old Lakers were out there as everybody's bread and butter. Before the crash, they looked at Lakers as slime balls and greasers. Man, when they became your bread and butter fish, they suddenly became a lot more highly regarded, didn't they?
Yes, they did. Well, I started wire pumping, we're going back, but in 1969 over on Lake Michigan, to begin with, even before, maybe probably 67, but before riggers and all of that. So, they basically were, were a bottom fish. This strain's a little bit different, but you are correct. But, of course, with the crash of the Illinois, the lake trout, target gobies, and, them being invasive and coming in. But it actually, the texture of the fish has totally changed, and the species that we have has developed. You've seen it on Facebook, and I've sent you photos. I could give my neighbors fillets of lake trout, and they think they're salmon. So,
Well, that's one of the things that's changed. We're talking with Captain Ed Retherford of Trout Scout Charters. His website, troutscoutcharters.com. That's troutscoutcharters.com. Ed's been on the Great Lakes, well, as long as anybody out there. And he brought it up. So after the break, I want to talk to him about this. He said he was out there in 67 on Lake Michigan. I'm thinking that's got to be the first year those fish came back. So I want to talk with Ed about that and much more after the break here on Outdoor Magazine. Then we'll also check in with Nick Green of MUCC, and we'll answer this week's Ask Avery segment. That's coming up, answer the Ask Avery question. That's coming up at the end of hour 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine. Lots more coming around. Stick around with us. I'd appreciate it. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Sheboygan on Big Country Gold. That's 1240 AM, 100.7 FM. You can hear us in Flint on Sports Extra, 1330 WTRX. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Manistee on WTIQ, 1490 AM, 95.3 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by the Linwood Beach Marina and Campground. Linwood Beach can be your year-round Saginaw Bay fishing destination and your Mid-Michigan tracker and Angler Quest and Polar Craft headquarters. You know I love that. I was talking with Scott at Linwood Beach just this morning. He says they've been very busy, but they would love to see you. Come on out, launch your boat there, get a yearly launch pass if you want. If you need your boat ready to rock for the summertime trolling season, the folks from Linwood Beach can help you out. Full service marine shop, great location, great people, great service. What more can you ask? Check them out online at linwoodbeachmarina.com. While you are online, please check out my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com, and then head on over to TroutScoutCharters.com. That's the website of Captain Ed Retherford, charter captain who's been on the Great Lakes as long as anyone. And Ed, before the break, you mentioned 1967. You were over on Lake Michigan. I'm thinking, wasn't that the first year the salmon came back?
Yes, it was. Yeah, my uncle sort of adopted me because my dad was a golfer. So, and I loved to fish. So, and I was going to college then. I didn't have a lot of time, but I was actually. I was doing a thesis on the coho salmon, the planning. That was going to be my senior thesis, and that's another long story. But anyways, so I decided to go over, and it was right after the tragedy of, was mayhem over there. I mean, and then the storm came, which you can, people can research on. I mean, it was unbelievable. Nowadays, there'd be people that'd be out there. There'd be probably 1,000 kayaks out there fishing at the mouth of the river if it was that time period. But they were in canoes and, everything else, and the storm hit. That's history.
Yeah, well, and speaking of history, though, I think it's good to educate some of our younger listeners. This is Platte Bay is the place that got hit the hardest, that had the most damage, right?
Right. Yep. And it was. That week was fairly, everybody got into the mood, and it was, you were able to fish. So, and, they talk about it, but, at that time, flatfish was about the only bait that was in Michigan, and it was like, you could rent your flatfish out if you had some, I mean, people were, to cast or troll behind the boat, and of course, a lot of them used them for pike at that time, but, they painted them or whatever colors they thought were bright and the whole deal. I mean, I had them up to a few years ago. I probably still got them buried somewhere in the garage just for anxiety, for old anxiety, to keep them. But.
Well, Ed, I've got a picture of 10-year-old Mike Avery holding 2 kings we caught in 1968 off Manistee, running flatfish, flatlined behind the boat on braided line because nobody knew anything different.
No, I saw that. I think they had it on Facebook, didn't you, or somewhere? I saw it. It was funnier. I was laughing because every time I saw Dr. Tanner, I was going to school and playing sports at Olivet, and we had a lot of Michigan State professors, and I called up there, and he allowed me to go to Henrietta Hatchery and bring back, coho salmon smolt, and I had them in the bottom of where we lived in an aquarium and ice cubes, and tried to keep them alive, and did a growth study on them, and then got some from got a couple from Lake Michigan and a couple from Marquette Harbor, and did my thesis, my junior and senior thesis to graduate on the growth rate of the coho salmon. So
Wow.
that could have been the first published paper on them, but it was. It probably wasn't too scientific, but I thought it was. So.
Well, and I keep, I go back to those early days. People, it was new. It was an exciting fishery. Nobody knew anything about it yet. You didn't know how to fish it. There were people going out there in ski boats and rowboats because that's all we had. You take a look at today now, so many years later. The equipment has evolved. The boats have evolved. The tactics have evolved. It's a different world. It's the same fish, basically, but we look at it completely different. And you have watched this evolution along the entire path. I think that's fascinating.
Unbelievable. When I think about it, and I mean, I'm not bragging, but we've gone from. That's what I tell the kids nowadays, because, you've known and I've talked about it. All my kids fish, my daughter Amelia and Philip and Paul. And Philip and Paul are both captains, too. So, but anyways, even when I had, in the 70s, when I took them out as little babies, we were using triangulation to find reefs in Thunder Bay. Somebody's light on the shore, and the cement plant and North Point, lining up the reefs, even though we had, at that time I had charts, so I at least could figure out where they were, the shallower parts, which a lot of people didn't do, but still, yeah, it's unbelievable now. You just, with social media and everything, it's just, totally different.
Has it made us better anglers, or has it just made it easier to catch fish? And there is, you might say, well, that's the same question. I don't feel like it is. Has it made us better anglers, or is it just easier to catch fish?
If somebody uses it all, I think it's made you a better angler, but I think it's made people lazy. And I give the analogy, like, and some of the younger charter boat captains get mad at me, but I said, okay, let's run 20 miles out of Alpena up to the Nordmere north of here, which is a big reef. We get hammered with fog and all your electronics shut off. How do you get back to Alpena? How do you run back there? From that course with no electronics, basically by compass alone. How do you get back to the harbor of Alpena?
Yeah.
And that's always been my question to them.
I look at fishing boats today, and they don't even put compasses on them, which to me just blows my mind. My boat, and I'm embarrassed to say this, it doesn't have a compass on it, which I think is absolutely stupid.
Well, I agree. We have to have them. When they, it should probably be in the rigs for the Coast Guard. You're going to bring something up, everybody's going to be making compasses again. But it's just the world it is, and but still, you can say you were there and you did that, and I mean, I still have. I'm on different electronic staffs and that, and they've changed over the years, but I still have the initial green box that, Daryl Lawrence invented, back in the early 50s, that I don't use that, but I got it. I have it in the basement just to bring up and
Sure.
show people what we started with.
Sure. So of your tools today, what is the most valuable? Is it speed? Is it location? Is it water temp? I mean, what are you looking at when you go out there today? Or do you not even pay attention to your electronics because you've been out there so long you just know?
No, I pay attention to the electronics because, but still, something happens, I pretty much know what's going on. But we've got all those apps, but, again, you know how you can, well, I'm not going to badmouth the weather guys, but, if you could have a monsoon with 30% chance of rain kind of deal. So the good news is, in the old days, all the storms came from the west, so we could see them coming at least. The bad news was if you were out, off this coast, the storms were coming at you, so you'd have to run back in. Nowadays, the bad thing is the winds have changed drastically. We get a lot of southeast, northeast winds in the afternoon, which we never had before. But again, I have phones, but of course our phones don't work all the time. So if you're running outside your cell phone service, you have to have a feel for it too.
Yeah.
And I'm safety first. Those your customers don't come back, even if they're longtime customers, if they get caught in a storm.
Yep.
It's just,
Yeah. So looking, just to wrap it up, looking for out towards this summer, good, strong fishery, and you may have touched on this earlier, but just to recap, do you expect it to be a good summer out there?
I do. My boat's still on the dirt because it's northern, northern Michigan. And you saw it. Everybody's seen it. We had the hot temperatures last week, and this morning when I got up, it was 29 degrees. But anyways, it's still on the dirt, and I've got to paint the bottom and get it inspected and all that. So I don't trailer it, and I laugh because pontoons have evolved so much now that one of the guys that I work with, he bought a pontoon, and they are unbelievable. I mean, that's like you said.
Yeah, that Angler Quest is a heck of a boat, but there's something about the way you're doing it that has worked for so many years. And I always enjoy our conversations. I think it's wonderful to look back at how this all began and to get that from you, a guy who has seen it firsthand. I mean, that's the type of stuff that people should listen to and should take to heart because this stuff, you've seen it, and I think your stories and your information carry an awful lot of weight, and I appreciate you joining us.
Well, I always enjoy you too, Mike. We've gone way back to, the old days of Birch Run and every place else. So,
yeah, that's for sure.
You're almost there with me now. So
I'm getting there. I'm getting there fast.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, Ed.
Okay.
I appreciate
it. Good luck turkey hunting. That's what I was doing this morning. I'm actually sitting here looking at the lake right now, but my wife wanted to know why I had to go somewhere to interview. So, but anyways. I had to have an excuse to go look for turkeys.
There you go. I was stopping by scouting some birds on the way in this morning. Captain Ed Retherford of Trout Scout Charters, the website troutscoutcharters.com. That's troutscoutcharters.com. He is a guy who has literally firsthand seen the inception of the Great Lakes salmon fishery, and he's been riding that wave, pun intended, ever since. troutscoutcharters.com. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, Nick Green of MUCC. I'm curious what Nick has to say. There's a lot of things coming out of Lansing right now that certainly have me upset, and a lot of you as well. We'll see if Nick wants to go there, and then we'll wrap up the hour with this week's Ask Avery segment. That's coming up in hour 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Houghton Lake on the Twister 92.1 WTWS. You can hear us in Manistee on WMLQ 97.7 FM. And you can hear us in the Thumb on WMIC in Sandusky 660 AM, 95.3 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by VersaSkins. Just change your skin for the season you're in. And if you want to save 50% through the end of the month, go to versaskins.com. That's versaskins.com. Use the promo code HUNT50, and you can get half off everything on the online store. Half off. I mean, I'm wearing Versa Skins this weekend in the Michigan Turkey Woods. It's going to be a little chilly in the mornings. Great product, great company, and you can get half off if you go to the website versaskins.com and use the promo code HUNT50. It is a very, very good deal. You know what else is a good deal? Membership at MUCC. It only costs a few bucks. You can go to MUCC.org and sign up, and I think you would be supporting conservation in our state much more than just going out and planting a tree for Earth Day. I told you my thoughts on that one earlier. We as hunters and anglers and shooters and trappers are the ultimate conservationists. For us, Earth Day is every day, but I digress. Nick Green of MUCC is joining us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Nick, welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing well, Mike. Thanks for having me, and thanks for the great plug.
Oh, well, listen, always a pleasure. You know I support MUCC, and I'm curious, what do you want to talk about this week? There are things going on, but I want to see where you want to go with our conversation.
You know, we have a lot going on. As you noted, it is Earth Day week, and hunters and anglers kind of Earth Day for us is every day. And we're actually excited this weekend to be celebrating that holiday, bringing in Mark Kenyon from Meat Eater. And he will be up in Kalkaska with us doing an on-the-ground project. They're doing a bunch of brush building piles and invasive removals, and so it'll have a lot of benefit for small game habitat. But we're also moving into our turkey season here, you know, and it's always fun to remind folks of the impact that Michigan United Conservation Clubs has had on turkeys. So, you know, and just in the last few years, we've had resolutions move through our legislature and our Natural Resources Commission, one of which includes a Saturday opener. So that was something our members brought forward. We lobbied for and got passed. Being able to hunt turkeys from an elevated platform. That's another recent in the last 5 or 6 years. So, you know, there's a lot of great things we do, and it really depends on what your interests are, but whether it's turkey, steelhead, woodcock, just morel hunting, being outside, you know, we work on everything conservation and outdoor recreation. So we'd love to have you. Lots of ways to get involved.
And what do we call small game habitat?
Rabbitat.
We got to get that in there, Rabbitat. I absolutely love that. And speaking of woodcock, I think you've been out with some of the crews, too. That's kind of an interesting project.
It is. You know, I'm actually a permitted woodcock bander here in the state. So there's about 80 of us, and we go out and try to find these woodcock and band them and help to aid in the data collection that happens when they're harvested in the fall from their migration from Michigan down to the Gulf Coast. So we do that every spring during the closed nesting season, and it's very exciting. You know, we're hoping this year that we're going to be able to get some of our new freshman legislators out with us, especially some of the Democrats who maybe don't have as much of a hunting and fishing tradition in their kind of how they grew up. So we hope to get them a field, get their hands on some woodcock chicks, really connect those dots for, you know, hunters and anglers are conservationists. That's what we care about first. You know, the harvest, everything else comes second.
Absolutely. And speaking of some of those folks in Lansing, I see some lawsuits have already been filed in relation to the so-called common sense gun laws. And I got to expect there's more coming, Nick.
Yes, that is what we're hearing. We're staying very close to this issue. You know, we've been communicating with the folks who are involved in those lawsuits. We weighed heavily whether we were going to get involved or not. And at this time we aren't, but we're again taking this back to our members. We're talking with our board. We're figuring out where and when may be the right opportunity to you know, make our opposition more known. But we have been opposed to these bills since their inception. The only two we support are the sales tax exemption and then for when you buy a safe or safety equipment. Other than that, we have opposed all the other bills.
Well, and I get the fact, look, you got to pick your battles, and you can only spread yourself so thin, and you've still got big battles out there, like with the consent decree. That's still out there. So I appreciate the fact that you're not willing to jump into everything and maybe spread yourselves too thin at one time.
Thanks, Mike. Like you noted, we have a lot going on right now. Consent decree, firearms. We're trying to get our own legislative agenda going. We have youth camp coming up. So, again, we pick and choose our battles, and we try to strategically, you know, oppose those things where we know we can get some movement on or make a change.
Plus, you've got to save yourself time to go turkey hunting and steelhead fishing as well.
My first turkey hunting adventure will be this weekend. I have not harvested a Michigan turkey, so I'm going with a coworker, Justin, who is a very avid turkey hunter. I hope I have a Tom down by the time people listen to this Saturday.
Wonderful. Good luck to you. If you get him, send a picture and I'll post it. We're talking with Nick Green of MUCC, MUCC.org. Nick, always a pleasure. Let's talk again.
Thanks, Nate.
All right. MUCC.org is the website if you want to sign up to become a member. I used to say use the promo code Mike. No, don't use that promo code. It only costs a few bucks. And the money's going to a good cause. MUCC.org. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, we'll wrap up this second hour of the show with this week's Ask Avery segment. An interesting question this week. It's a two-part question. I hope we have time for both. We'll see how much we can accomplish there. And then after that, as we get into hour number 3, we'll talk turkey hunting with Tom Lounsbury and maybe a turkey recipe from wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. That's this week right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine Show in Holland on WHTC 1450 AM 99.7 FM. You can hear us in Tawas on WIOS 1480 AM 106.9 FM. And in Muskegon on WKBZ 1090 AM. The Ask Avery segment is brought to you each week by my friends from Security Credit Union. They love to work with outdoorsmen and women, and they can help you with your next outdoor adventure. Check them out online at securitycu.org. That's securitycu.org. The way the Ask Avery segment works is you can send me a question the best way in email, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. And that is exactly what Ben Walton did. He said, Mike, we were watching an episode of The Wardens on the Outdoor Channel. We are dumbfounded by what we heard. The Michigan DNR officer on this episode said that if a hunter legally shoots a deer and it ends up dying on private property, the only way to retrieve the animal is by getting the landowner's permission to do so. However, if the landowner refuses to let the hunter retrieve their deer, the landowner cannot claim the deer as his own. They must leave the deer to lie there and or rot and be consumed by predators. What a shameful waste. I don't understand why this happens. He says, please tell me this isn't true. Well, I am not a conservation officer. I think I know the answer to this. But we're going to call in the experts here. Sgt Mike Mshar joining us now to help answer this week's Ask Avery segment. Sarge, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Good, sir. How are you?
I'm doing really good, really good. I appreciate your time, too. So I know you've seen this question ahead of time, this part of the question. Is that the case? Can you legally not go onto somebody else's land to retrieve your animal?
That is the case. That is correct. There's a pretty good explanation for it. Obviously, private property is just that, right? It's private property. And it's the discretion of the landowner to let whoever he wants come on it or whoever she wants to come on it. And when it comes to game, there's no reason or nothing in the law that it would allow you to just go onto someone else's property to retrieve that game. And it's not just deer; it'd be any game species.
Turkey for springtime turkey season. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's because it's private property. So, and at the same time, the other part of that question was, could the landowner tag that animal and keep it? No, they can't. Remember, the fishing game belongs to the state of Michigan till it's reduced to possession. And so you'd have to legally harvest that in order to put your tag on it. And the landowner or their guest didn't do that, so they can't just go up and put their tag on it. And yes, it would have to stay there. Now, there is some ways around that. And I'll tell you this, some really easy suggestions are, obviously, if you're hunting a piece of property with adjoining property, I always suggest go meet those people, knock on their door, talk to them, say, hey, I'm going to be hunting next door. If something does run over on your property, can we retrieve it? Most of the time, that person, once you came and met with them, they're going to be like, absolutely. And it might go back and forth. If you've got adjoining landowners, hey, if you're going to be able to come on mine to get it, can I go on yours? And it works out. There are situations where, somebody doesn't get along or they just don't want anybody on their property and they're going to say, nope, you can't come get it. Well, as a hunter, you got to think about, maybe I don't want to hunt so close to that property line. Maybe I want to set up somewhere different. But again, we can't control where game runs, right? That, you shoot them, as well as anybody that they go where they want to die or to expire. So what I suggest is if that does happen and that landowner is like, nope, you're not coming to get it, call us. If you can't resolve it yourself, talking face-to-face, call the poaching line, and if we have an officer available, we can send one out. Our officers are trained extensively in conflict mitigation and to resolve those situations. And the majority of the time, we can resolve that. We can talk to the landowner. We can come up with a solution that everybody is happy with. Maybe there's going to be that small percentage of time that we can't, and that animal will lay there, but we'll explain that law to the landowner as well. Because there are landowners that are under the impression that they can just take that game in which they can't.
Mike, I appreciate that. Listen, there's a second part of this, and I realize, look, these decisions are made above your pay grade, and the question is about primarily roadkill deer being left to rot there. Whose job is that, Sarge? Is that a game warden's job to pick up those animals?
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely not. So I know exactly what you're talking about. I saw the news program where there's some conflict or some issues going on over, I think it's Grand Traverse County. And again, I think, basically, the Road Commission has every right under, roads that are under their management to pick up those animals, and most of them do, but they have to dispose of them in a proper way. And again, you, me, everybody who's listening knows that you see piles of dead carcasses, processed carcasses on state land all over the state that people have dumped there, and that's illegal, and it's unsightly, and I don't want to see it, you don't want to see it, so there's proper ways to dispose of it. And that goes for the Road Commission as well. There's other avenues they can use to dispose of that other than dumping them on state land. And, a landfill would be a great suggestion, but absolutely, it's not nothing wrong with them picking them up. Most of our road commissions do. It's just they have to be disposed of properly, just like you or I have to dispose of ours properly.
Sergeant Mike Mshar, you've been a lot of help. I appreciate your time. Keep up the good work, and hopefully we'll have a chance to talk again.
Yes, sir. Take care.
All right. We appreciate Sergeant's involvement in our Ask Avery segment this week, and I appreciate Ben Walton sending me an email to mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. If you have a question you would like to hear answered by me or one of the experts I may be able to get in touch with, send me an email, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. And a big thank you to our friends at Security Credit Union for making each week's Ask Avery segment possible. Check them out online at securitycu.org. That's securitycu.org. We'll take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back, Tom Lounsbury and wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar coming up in hour number 3. My name is Mike Avery. The website, mikeaveryoutdoors.com. And again, that email address, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. I would love to hear from you. Don't hesitate to reach out.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Yes, indeed. This is the big guy, Mike Avery. Thank you for joining us this week on the Outdoor Magazine radio show. I do appreciate you being along. Boy, it's been an interesting week or so, hasn't it? The weather's been absolutely crazy. It was so warm. It was so summertime. I mean, we were out working in the yard. We got sunburn. I thought, it's too early to be this hot. Well, it was indeed too early to be this hot because 36 hours later, the temperature had dropped 50 degrees and it was snowing. But that's Michigan. That is springtime in Michigan. And you got to love it. You have to. You have to embrace it because if you let it bother you, if you let it frustrate you, it's not going to do your mental state any good because there's nothing you can do about it. There's a reason people say, you always talk about the weather, but you can't do anything about it because we talk about the weather and we can't do anything about it. So we just have to make the most of it. For example, Now, we are recording the show midweek, but as I look at the weather forecast here, it's called for cold and rainy this weekend. Well, that's not ideal turkey hunting weather. Although this morning on the way into the studio, though it wasn't raining, it was very cold, and I stopped by my number one spot just to see if I could hear any gobbles. And guess what? There were at least 2 birds gobbling on the roost. About 200 yards from where my blind is set up. Now, everything could change between now and then, and probably will, because that's one of the things turkeys are known for, is screwing up your plans, just like most fish and critters are. You know, you think about a guy like Tom Lounsbury, who has spent his career in the outdoors, outdoor writer. Now he's an outdoor broadcaster, an outdoor radio guy. And when I set up the rundown for this week's show, I didn't consciously do this. For example, in the previous hour, Ed Retherford, who is the longest running charter captain on the Great Lakes that we're aware of. We can't find anybody who's been out there longer. He was there in 1967 when the first year when the salmon came back. Well, Tom has been around the outdoor industry for a long time too, and that's one of the reasons why I enjoy having conversations with him. And I scheduled Ed and Tom to be on the same show this week. Maybe I was waxing nostalgic as I put this rundown together. But Tom's with us, and I always look forward to it. Tom, welcome back to the show. How are you doing, buddy?
It's good to be on, Mike. And by the way, Ed Retherford went to school together.
So you're both old guys.
we're both old guys. Yeah, I know Ed real well. Yeah, and what an excellent fisherman, I'll tell you.
So was that high school? Way back in high school?
Yep, back in high school.
Oh, no kidding. I had no idea, but that is very cool.
Yeah, it is. I was glad to hear you mention his name. I like Ed. Yeah.
Well, he was talking about being there for the first year that the salmon came back on Lake Michigan, and I know from talking with you in the past, you actually hunted the first turkey season Michigan ever had.
Yep. Well, it was an experimental hunt, and it occurred in 1968. I found out about it by watching Morton Neff Thursday night, 7 o'clock, his Michigan Outdoors TV show. And back then, you sent in an written application for it. And I couldn't believe it when just before spring, I got this big envelope from the state of Michigan, and it had the map of where I was going to hunt up in northern Michigan, and it had the rules and a few instructions on how to hunt turkeys, and had they didn't have paper tags back then. It was a metal tag that you put around the turkey's leg if you got one.
Wow. And there can't have been many of you out there that first year.
In my area, there were only 30 hunters.
Wow.
So, and I didn't know what I was doing. I read the directions were good. It told you that you got to sound like a hen and go for a headshot. And back then, you could use even BB shot number 2s, and I went with number 2s. I figured a big bird, and that was legal back then. Mm-hmm. And I went to the hardware store. Of course, there weren't turkey calls on the shelf, so he ordered me a turkey call. And it turned out it was and I still like that call. You don't see it very often, but it's called a scratch box. And it's about the size of a pack of cigarettes, a little longer, and it's rectangular, and it's got an open end on the one end, and you got a little piece of hardwood that you chalk up, and you can either pull it across the end of the call or the call across it, and it does everything you want. And I still like it. It's very compact, but I'm a friction call guy. I like my pan calls and that good old wooden with the old swing lid there, wooden turkey call. You can't beat it.
Who made that call, by the way? Do you remember?
No, but I got some new ones. If you go online there and Google up scratch ball turkey calls, there's about 3 or 4. I got my last one from a gentleman in Pennsylvania, and anyway, handmade. It's not an industrial thing, but really good call.
Tom Lounsbury went online. Oh, my gosh.
Oh, hey, that's the way it is. I do miss my old typewriter when it comes to writing, and whiteout don't work on a computer screen. So, and I remember dot matrix. I come right up the whole gamut here with the writing in.
Oh, that's funny. And you're still writing today, aren't you, Tom?
Oh yeah. As of this month, I haven't missed a weekly newspaper deadline in 39 years.
Wow, that's impressive. Woods and Water News as well?
Yes, I've been doing them ever since their very beginning. And I remember when it was just kind of like a little newspaper, folded up newspaper thing, and then Tom Campbell, man, he changed it into what it is today.
So how have Tom has done a great job. How have your turkey hunting tactics changed over the years? Do you feel like you got them figured out a little bit better now?
You're still learning. I mean, you develop what you do over the years is you've developed gut feelings, instincts of what to do and everything. Isn't always right, but and one of the main daunting things I had was how to call and so forth. Calling is boy, and today they got DVDs out and how-tos, and it's just marvelous. Back then in '68 there was nothing, but and NWTF now puts on workshops, turkey hunter workshops, and I'm helping this spring with DNR has a Becoming an Outdoors Woman turkey hunting seminar at the Cass City DNR office in May, and I like helping with that. I like, guiding a lady that has never fired a gun, never hunted, it is wonderful. They listen, they're serious, they don't debate what we should do or anything, and I just really love taking the ladies out turkey
So
hunting.
What are you saying? When you take a guy out, he doesn't listen and he wants to argue with you? Is that basically what you're saying?
Absolutely. I remember taking an old friend of mine, gray-haired guy, avid deer hunter, hunted everything else, wanted to know how to do turkeys, 15 minutes out in the woods. He was trying to give me some ideas of what we should try. So, that's it. Men come in with kind of a different attitude than the ladies. And the ladies, hey, they're one of the fastest growing parts of the hunting world today, and I think that's marvelous.
So what have you learned? You say you learned to ebb and flow a little bit with the birds. But when you look back on the years, what are the more important things you've learned about turkey hunting?
Oh, it's scouting. Having an idea where the birds are, where you see them during the winter. They're most likely not going to be in the spring. In fact, here in my thumb area, they really started breaking up, the big flocks, about a week ago. And on my farm, I haven't had turkeys all winter. And I was walking my dog by my ditch the other day, and she put up, I lost count of the turkeys that, they were on the move, spreading out. And I realize now, when I was checking things out, I'm sure the hens are, because of the weather. Weather really, the turkeys are almost bad as us. They get spring fever, too. I think with this warmer weather, we got some hens on the nest already.
Oh, really? And so you're going to be able to hunt the farm, turkey hunt the farm? Oh, yeah.
But you scout. You have different. I have different options. What I like during COVID, I got that ZZ, and I love it. You can get your turkey tag over the counter, and I did the ZZ, which is marvelous. Gives you the whole season. That's a relatively new thing, and it's wonderful for Zone 3. Down southern Michigan.
And I think it's private land only too. It's southern Michigan private land, but you can hunt from April 22nd. All the way through the other way.
0234, which is private land down here, but up north it's private and public land. And one of my favorite places to hunt up north is near Atlanta. I love those rolling hills of Atlanta.
I know. You're going to go up there and hunt with Gary Morgan. Hang tight. We've got to take a break. We're talking with Tom Lounsbury here on the Outdoor Magazine Show. Tom is a guy who, I'm telling you, honestly, it's a cliche, but he has forgotten more about hunting and guns and habitat management than I'll ever learn. And that's one of the reasons I respect him so much. He's a knowledgeable guy. He does not hesitate to share that knowledge. And he's got some pretty good stories to share as well. We'll take a break. Lots more with Tom coming back after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Houghton Lake on 98.5 WUPS. You can hear us in Traverse City on WTCM, 580 AM. And you can hear us in the Sioux on ESPN 1400 WKNW. I'm sorry, News Talk 1400 WKNW. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Killer Food Plots, Michigan-based family-owned Killer Food Plots. Now is the time to be thinking about your food plots. You know, even if there's snow back in the woods where you live, it's not too early to start thinking about them. I'm not saying turn dirt yet, but get your soil samples, come up with a plan. You know, where do you want them to be? How big do you want them to be? And the folks from Killer Food Plots can walk you through this step by step from taking your soil sample, and they always stress. Rich Krazan of Killer Food Plots says, take your soil sample. You got to know what you're working with. Get those soil samples in, get the results back, and then you can come up with a plan, because pretty soon, maybe very soon, depending on where you live in the state, it's going to be time to start getting out there and getting after them. The website, killerfoodplots.com. That's killerfoodplots.com. Talking now with Tom Lounsbury about pheasant hunting. Tom was actually involved in the very first, turkey hunt in Michigan. Tom, did you get a bird that first year?
No, heck no. I saw one in the distance, and I'm sure it was a gobbler. He was fanning out and everything, but he never came in range, and I obviously said something wrong. And he vacated, but it just took time. They started after the 68, starting in the early 70s. They had a lottery you had to apply for, and I would always go over. They would send out a list how many permits they were issuing out where and when, and I would always go for the high chances, and I generally got one. And if I didn't get one, I volunteered to be a caller for somebody, because calling was my the main thing I was really trying to learn how to do.
And isn't it amazing? You look at today. There's no more. Well, there is a lottery, but you can buy one over the counter. You're guaranteed.
Oh, yeah.
If you want a turkey hunt in Michigan these days, you can get a tag.
It is phenomenal. The wild turkey is one of the most successful conservation stories ever. And I mean, turkeys are found. They were never in Hawaii before, but I always told my wife, when we go to Hawaii, she can go to the beach. I'm going turkey hunting.
How did turkeys get to Hawaii? That's a long flight.
I think it was in the early 70s. They took the Rio Grande type turkeys, from Texas or something, and took to Hawaii. That's the variety they have there, and they really took off. It's a phenomenal place to go turkey hunting, and that's on my bucket list.
When I talk to folks who have hunted the different species of birds, they always say that the eastern, which is what we have here in Michigan, they say the eastern is the absolute hardest.
I am not hunting the other species. I was supposed to. I had originally was going with Gary Morgan. He runs a hunt down in Florida. He has a place there for Osceolas. And I had him all scheduled up. Well, then I had issues with cataracts. And so I had that fixed. Now I got 20/20, don't need glasses, so that was the good part. But I got Osceolas on my calendar for next year with Gary down in Florida.
So if I see you today, Tom, you're not going to be wearing glasses?
Nope, and I've worn them for over 60 years, and it's marvelous.
I don't think I'd recognize you.
Yeah, my wife doesn't either.
So you mentioned you love to hunt up near Atlanta. Is it because of the hills?
The entire atmosphere, and like here in my home area, private land hunting, you're limited by property lines, so how far you can go unless you get the state permit. You get a little more elbow room. Up at Atlanta, you can run and gun the elbow room you have, and I do love those hills. Getting a little hard on an old man, but what a great way to hunt turkeys. Well, when I hear you say run and gun, I'm thinking you're primarily a shotgun hunter then? Oh, yes. I tried bow hunting one time, and if I had a 410, I could have got this nice mega gobbler, but it was not a shot I wanted to take with a bow, and then brush got in the way, and I still may do that, but probably if I get a turkey with archery tackle, it'll be during the fall season. I do love my shotguns for turkeys, and that brings up a point, Mike. I never win raffles. I go to the different conservation banquets, you name it.
I hear you.
and I buy all these raffle tickets, and I just don't win anything. Well, it was end of March. I always go get all my fishing and hunting licenses near the end of March, and my ORV stickers. I get all that. I was at the Cass City Do It Best Hardware, and I ran into Jeff Wallace. He's the president of the Cass City Gun Club, and he was there dropping off raffle tickets. They were only going to sell 100 at $10 a piece for this turkey shotgun that was at the hardware store, and you could see the gun, and I see it was a dandy. And I like helping good causes. I like the gun club real well, and so I bought a ticket. And then last week I get a phone call. You won the gun. I mean, I was glad I was sitting down. And what a shotgun. It is Winchester's SXP Longbeard. Now they call it the Longbeard. It's all decked out for turkey, but some of the money that goes from that sale goes to the National Wild Turkey Federation.
Nice.
And this is a gun that is built for turkey hunting. It's got a chrome-lined bore and chamber. It's backbored, and backboring, people may not understand it, but the bore is oversized above normal specs, so the wad does not create friction and deform the shot. And it has an extra full choke, and I patterned it last Sunday. I mean, I was like a kid with a new toy. I couldn't wait to get out there. And I was totally amazed. I was just using standard 2 3/4 inch. This is a 20 gauge.
Oh, 20.
And go in 3-inch Magnum, but you can shoot 2 3/4. And I thought, well, it came with True Glow fiber optic sights on the bead, and I even had an Allen wrench that came with it because I thought, I'm going to have to adjust these sights. And I used a standard bullseye target, and I started at 10 yards, and oh my goodness, dead center. It took the center of the bullseye right out with a pattern the size smaller than a tennis ball. At 20 yards, it was the size of a softball, and at 30, it was the size of a volleyball, which tells me that even with that 2 3/4 load, it'll kill a turkey because I got a 30-yard limit. Now I'm looking forward to trying some more expensive turkey loads to see how far that puppy will reach out.
Well, if you patterned it out to, say, 50 yards and your pattern was good, something you were happy with, would you then extend your hunting range out to 50 yards?
That would open up my options. The only thing is turkey hunting to me is calling. Spring turkey hunting is calling. Fall is a different thing. To me, you do use calling in the fall somewhat, but in spring, oh my goodness, that calling those birds in, and like I guide a lady taking hunting, I'm having just as much fun just being the caller and talking to the birds, and I like to bring them in to near 30 yards, and most of the gobblers I've taken have been inside 30 yards. And my longest shot ever was 32 yards. I want to make it a done deal.
Yeah. In my experience, if they come in past, the 100-yard mark, maybe 75 yards, they're going to come in. They're going to come in maybe right in your lap, 15 yards or so. They're And I hunt out of a blind, and they're not blind shy at all. No. I know one gentleman that he guides for turkeys. It's Hot Shot Outfitters up in tip of the thumb there, Ray Hoodie. He actually uses a lucky blind, and they lift it up and keep walking towards the flock with the blind, and it doesn't bother the turkeys. I'm not going to try that, but I mean, that tells you all what blinds have an effect on turkeys. Yeah, I've set up blinds in the middle of the afternoon and killed birds an hour later. They're not.
Oh yeah.
But a big doe. If you take a white-tailed doe and she sees a new blind, she will turn herself inside out and stomp and snort and everything else for days and days and days.
Yep.
Thank God turkeys aren't like that, or we'd never kill one.
No, but they got excellent eyesight and color perception. That's why, hunter orange is not required for spring turkey hunting or fall turkey hunting when you're hunting. And that's one of the reasons we have to use shotguns and so forth for turkey hunting. And that's another reason why I'm thinking back in the 90s, the National Wild Turkey Federation pushed it. You can't use any heavier than number 4 birdshot. And I think that's a good thing. And, safety-wise. Otherwise, I love those old number 2s. If I liked hunting with a double barrel. And if the right barrel with number 6s or 5s didn't put that bird down, those 2s would bust it down. But because turkeys They're not made of Kevlar, but you try for a body shot, you might not get that. Find that turkey. They're tough.
I'm not convinced that they're not made of Kevlar. I mean,
I hear you.
Back when I used to hunt them with a shotgun, and there were a couple birds that I actually hit and just rolled them. I realize now that maybe it was out of range or I didn't have a good pattern, but I hit the birds and actually rolled them over, and they got up and ran away. So I think they got some armor in there.
Yeah, those feathers are tough. They are tough. I had a unique experience, and it would have been May 2021. I had turkeys on the farm, and at that point, I've been turkey hunting for over 50 years and taking turkeys, but I've never taken one on my farm. And I went and called. And actually, the shotgun I used was an old Winchester made in 1936, model 97, 12-gauge, with a 30-inch full choke and all that. And it took me 2 hours to get this bird in, and I shot him. And it was the biggest gobbler in all my life I ever shot, and I shot him on my farm. So He's special. But his spurs were 1 3/4 inches long, and I thought, whoa. And so I saved the legs with the spurs. In fact, they're going to go up on the plaque. And I saved his beard. And I had commemorative bucks measure him. It was at our Huron Daily Tribune Hunters Banquet that you had spoke at the year before. Yeah. And the commemorative bucks gentleman was there, and he measured everything for me. And that gobbler is in the top 100 in the record book. So,
nice.
Yeah. And I'm not a trophy hunter, but boy, what a pleasure getting that bird on my own farm.
Exactly. So. What a nice surprise, a nice bonus, and have it come on your own farm. Tom, always a pleasure to talk with you. I wish you luck this turkey hunting season.
I always look forward to it, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's again, you've got so much knowledge, so much experience, and you tell such great stories. And we could spend 3 hours with Tom Lounsbury just listening to you tell stories, but and maybe sometime we can do that.
And maybe some of it's true, Mike.
Well, I figure if you tell enough stories, some of them will be true, yes.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
All right. Thanks, Tom. We'll talk to you again. Tom Lounsbury here on the Outdoor Magazine Show, one of my favorite guests, and you can see why. In fact, I've had several people say that Tom Lounsbury, that Tom Lounsbury guy, he's one of my favorite guests. I've had listeners tell me this. I hear that about Richard P. Smith. I hear that about Tom Lounsbury. I hear that about Lance Valentine. I love to hear your comments on the show. Don't hesitate to reach out. My email address is mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. That's mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. Love to hear from you. Let me know what you think, what you like, what you don't like, what you like to hear, what you don't want to hear. We'll take a break. Lots more coming up right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine Show on more than 30 stations across the great state of Michigan, including News 97, 98, 98.7, WLDN in Ludington. In Escanaba, WCHT 600 AM, 95.3 FM. And in Saginaw, News Radio 790 and 100.5 FM, WSGW. I am in the studios of WSGW right now. In fact, this one small corner of the building, this one small corner of this studio, for 3 hours, I kind of take it over. And I've got a logo behind me that proves that I'm supposed to be here. I'm in here with Jonathan Dent. First show I've done with Jonathan. Jonathan, you're doing a great job. I appreciate that very, very much. Let's see. This show has just flown by. Oh, what else? Oh, turkey season. I got to talk about turkey season. I am so excited. There are three things I love most in the outdoors, and that's turkey hunting and walleye fishing and bear hunting. And here over the next 6 weeks or so, I'm going to have a chance to do all of them. Turkey season opens for me this weekend. It is Hunt ZZ, which is Southern Michigan private land. It runs from April 22nd right on through the entire mosquito season, right on through the entire month of May. That's a long, long time. I have found in years when I haven't gotten a bird, the difference in hunting from this opening weekend to the end of May is remarkable. Number one, the terrain changes completely. You know, out there this weekend, you can see through the woods. You can hear birds gobble because the trees aren't fleshed out yet. Give it a few weeks and it's a whole different ballgame. You can't see. And if a bird gobbles, it's like, okay, is that bird 50 yards away or is it 100 yards away, 150 yards away? It's harder to tell. But I'm pretty excited. I hunt birds a little differently than a lot of people. Like Tom Lounsbury in the previous 2 segments was talking about how he likes to run and gun. He's a shotgun hunter. Most turkey hunters are shotgun hunters. And they're mobile. They like to move. My turkey hunting philosophy is a lot more like deer hunting, in that I hunt out of a blind, almost always with a bow. I mean, I haven't hunted turkeys with a shotgun in probably 20 years, 17, 18 years. I have taken a couple birds with a shotgun, but most of my birds have went with archery tackle. Recurve, compounds, and crossbows. And this spring, I'm out there with a new crossbow, and I'm really excited about it. Really good shooting bow. I've spent some time with it, getting it absolutely dialed in. So there's no excuses there. I've taken away that excuse. But what I like to do is I sit in that Primal Outdoors Wraith 270 see-through blind. I love that blind because I can see out, but the critters can't see in. And I'm setting it up on a buddy's property, Doug's property, on his farm, where we know there are birds. In fact, on the way into the studio this morning, I swung by there just as it was getting light, just to see what I could see and hear what I could hear. And there were birds gobbling, at least 2 different birds, gobbling from the roost on the southeast corner of the property, about 200 yards from where my blind is set up. So what I do is I go out there and I set up, probably for opening morning, 1 decoy. Just 1 hen decoy, but the real nice Avian X decoys. I've learned on this. I've had birds in the past come in and look at my decoys and say, "Nope, that doesn't look real to me," and they wouldn't come in shooting range, and they wandered off. So at that point, I said, I'm gonna spend the long dollar, because they're not cheap, and buy myself a couple of the really realistic looking Avian X decoys, and they do seem to make a difference. So I'll probably put 1 hen decoy out at about maybe 10 yards is all. And I'll sit there and I'll wait for the birds to gobble, and then I will respond just to let them know that I'm there. And then I will shut up. And then when they hit the ground and start to gobble again, I will call to them again just to let them know that I'm there. From then on, after that, it becomes a mind game, because my human nature, every time I hear a bird gobble, I want to call and get them to gobble again because it's so much fun. But if you do that, you're kind of hurting yourself, because every time you gobble, once they've acknowledged you and they've kind of got you pinned down, if you just keep talking to them, you're not helping your cause, because at that point they expect that hen is going to come to them. So if you have the patience, which sometimes I struggle with, if you have the patience to sit there and shut up and just let things unfold, you're usually better off. There have been times on this same farm, in fact, a couple of years ago, I was set up on one end of the property. I saw a bird on the other side of the field. I thought, that's where I should be. So I moved my blind down to that spot. And an hour and a half later, there was a bird strutting where I was in the first place. Now, granted, I had to be patient enough to sit there for a couple of hours. But that's what I do. I'm sitting there with my crossbow over a decoy, call occasionally, not too much, try to get their attention, and hope that I can coax in a longbeard. I probably wouldn't shoot a jake. A jake is a legal target, an ethical target. If you shoot a jake, God bless you. I probably won't, so I'm waiting for a longbeard. There are at least 2 longbeards that I know of in there, maybe more, probably 3 that I know of. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to have fun regardless, right? I'm going to have fun. If you get a bird or just have a great hunt for some reason, let me know. Send me an email, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. Send me pictures. I'd love to share them on my Facebook page and on my Instagram feed. I am Mike Avery Outdoors on YouTube, on Instagram, and on Facebook, and on Twitter, if anybody cares. Who cares about Twitter? We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar right here on Outdoor Magazine. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. Appreciate you being along with us. And just a reminder, this segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Reader Landscaping. Reader can take care of your lawn and property because it's your nature and our nurture. Let Reader create an outdoor getaway in your backyard, as they have for me. In fact, I got the folks from Reader working on another project right now as well. Reader, they can maintain the property that you have, or they can maintain your property as it is, or they can do project work to improve your property as well, your lawn and property. If you go to their website, readerlandscaping.com, that's readerlandscaping.com, you can see examples of some of the work they have done, and it is absolutely phenomenal. Now, our backyard looks nice. Some of these backyards look absolutely magnificent, and they can do the same for you to either extent, just a little tweaking to help you out, or just to take the place over and make it a showpiece. Reader Landscaping is the company, and readerlandscaping.com is the website. We want to turn our attention now to wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. David, welcome back. How are you?
Very nice, Mike. How about yourself?
Good. I'm excited about turkey season this weekend. Are you going to be out there, Dave?
I'm going to do my very best.
Hey, also, I've had people reach out to me and say, hey, we know Dave is available for some catering. I have given them your number. Have you heard from these folks?
Yes, sir.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Okay, we got business out of the way. How about a recipe?
Okay, we got wild turkey, the breast parmesan.
Nice.
It's a real good recipe. On the breast, if you wanted to use more than one meal, like just doing roasting it or something like that, you can cut it into steaks. You can put some in the freezer and use some. So we're going to use about 8 to 10 ounces of breast meat per person. Need some flour, a couple of beaten up eggs, very well beaten up. You want to blend it very good. And 2 cups of breadcrumbs, nice dry breadcrumbs. You need 1 or 2 cans of California or imported tomatoes, and you want to hand crush them. You're going to take them, put them in a bowl, and use your hand and just kind of squeeze them through your fingers and kind of make it the size you want. You need an 8-ounce can of tomato puree, 1 medium onion diced fine, 4 cloves of garlic diced fine, and whatever spice you like, whether it's oregano or basil, or you could use a little combination of each to your liking. Black pepper grated all over the meat. Before we do anything, you want to get some of that pepper on there. You need a cup of Parmesan cheese, 12-ounce package of mozzarella cheese, shredded, a little olive oil, and some flour. So what you're going to do, you're going to take and pound out first the breast. You want to put it between heavy-duty saran wrap or a bread wrapper with the printing on the outside. You don't want to be driving anything like that into the meat. You want to pound it down to at least a half inch or so, because what's going to happen, turkey is one of those meats that wants to draw up and kind of pucker. So you got to beat it down to the point where it's the fibers are separated, and you're not going to get it that drawing up, because it will, believe you me. Okay, so you want to remove all the shot, feathers, silver skin, pound them down to about a half inch thick, then dredge it in flour, beaten up eggs, and then roll it in the crumbs. In a medium hot pan with some olive oil, you're going to brown it on both sides. And you're going to put this on a sheet pan or a casserole and get it in the oven while you're doing the rest of this. So for the sauce, you're going to take in a heavy pan again. You can use the same pan, just wipe it out with some olive oil. Saute the onions and the garlic slowly. You just want to break it so it's translucent, and you want to break it up so that it has a good flavor coming out of it. Add the spices. You can saute that a little bit. You don't want to burn them spices. Now, take the chopped or crushed tomatoes, add them to save some of the juice out, and you're going to add that to your pan. Bring it up to a nice heavy-duty boil. Reduce it, simmer it down for a while, maybe 5 minutes. Add the puree and simmer and stir it real good all the time. You don't want to burn this. So what you're going to do is test it for flavor now. And so you're going to grate the pepper all over the steaks, put a little bit of sauce down, and then lay a breast steak on each one, put more sauce on top, and put Parmesan cheese and mozzarella. And you're going to bake this at least, I would say 10 to 15 minutes. So you You're going to get them nice and tender. And you're going to maybe even up to 15 minutes. Some people would do it that long. Save enough sauce to top of the dish. Have some of your favorite pasta cooked, whether it's some kind of fettuccine or linguine, and put that right next to the breast on each plate. Spoon some sauce over the top. And, man, I'm telling you what, this is a killer way to use the breast of pheasant. And you're still going to have probably enough for 1 or 2 more meals in your freezer from this way.
David, that sounds wonderful. I hope you get a chance to use that recipe on a bird you get this weekend.
If I do, this is one of the recipes that I'll be using.
Excellent, David. Always a pleasure. Good luck. We'll talk again next week.
Thank you. Everybody have a safe season. Watch where you're shooting.
Words of wisdom from Wild Game Chef Extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar, a big part of the Outdoor Magazine show, as are you. Seriously, if you weren't listening, there'd be no reason to do this show. And then what would I do? I don't know what I'd do. Hey, check out my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My email address is mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Love to hear from you. Let me know what's on your mind. Join us every week, by the way, every week at Wednesday night at 7 o'clock for Wednesday Night Live, and Behind the Mic at 8:45 in the morning on Wednesday, right here from the Outdoor Magazine studio.